to This Week in Svelte, episode 124. I see an error, so I don't know if you are actually seeing this. Okay, yeah, sorry, oh gosh. I need to change my resolution, so I need to stop the stream. Sorry, I'll be back in a second. Okay, we should be back up, I hope. I don't know what you see. I don't know if you actually see anything, sewed anything. I hope you did. If you didn't, I'm sorry. I just used the wrong resolution. So, okay, let's circle back and let's say welcome everyone to This Week in Svelte. So we have the changelog to going forward because I've been absent for a month, and so last week we reached Svelte 5.45.2. But we didn't go any further, and so we can now open these other ones so that we can actually see what's going on. So there is this new thing which is add props to state referenced locally, and this actually made a lot of noise because let me show you. So if I open the playground if I open the playground, I need to zoom in a bit. Let's say that I have a new component and I have a script and then I have props and I do $props like this. And I have, I don't know, name. And let's say that I want to have an initial name. Let initial is equal to $state name. Now I will get this, which is this reference only capture the initial value of name. Did you mean to reference it inside a closure instead? And this is basically what was added inside the release of 5.45.3. So if I switch back to 5.45.2, you will see that you don't get a warning here. Now, why is this a big deal? And let me zoom in a bit more. Why is this a big deal? Well, the problem is that this is actually a problem, kind of, in the sense that, let's say that I show the name here. Actually, I show initial here. Now, this might be what you want, but let's say that I import component from component like this. And then I use the component like this. As you can see, like this is the name and this is the name inside the component. And it is not working. Why is it not working? I'm clearly assigning name and stuff like that. Now, the issue is that when you do this, you are basically kind of losing reactivity in the sense that you are creating a new state and you are reading state like this, and that's it. Like you don't have anything. So to fix this, you will need to do derived. And so once you have derived, you can see that this works. And with the recently, we made this change actually a few months ago, but you can also do input bind value initial and also write to the derived, which is pretty cool, right? Because I can change this, and then when this changes, it also updates. So if I had to do something like this, I would probably use this. And that's why we added the warning in the first place. So if I do this, sorry, with this, I don't get a warning. If I would use $state, I would get a warning. And the warning is literally telling me this. It's saying, look, if you do this, you will not get updates when name changes. And this can be very confusing. But if this is what you want to do, this can also be annoying because like you can do svelte ignore state referenced locally, and this will work. And up to me, I think that this is absolutely fine. Like, you can do it. Like, it's a warning. It's there. And in my opinion, warning like this is better to overfire than to underfire. So like, if you know what you are doing, you take a look at the warning and say, okay, that's probably fine. And you just add the svelte ignore. But I don't see an issue with that. But if instead you have a problem with this, like if instead you actually want initial to always be in sync with name initially and then to be able to change it, I would use derived here and then remove the svelte ignore. So the reason why a lot of people are complaining is because of this, because they were using this pattern in their applications, and now they have a lot of warnings, and I can see why people are like don't like warnings. At the same time, again, like don't mind. I've seen a comment about someone saying, yeah, I rushed into changing all the $sign state to $sign derived and I broke my app. And like, you shouldn't do that. Like, you should like take your time, see what the issues are about. If you want to ignore it, you can ignore it. And if you don't, you can just move it to derived. But you should actually work. And as a public service announcement, like the reason why this broke their app is because of this. So right now, if you have something that is a bit more involved than a string, for example, let's say that it's an array. Let's say that we have this array like this, and instead of binding value, we can do button on click is equal button push maybe, and then we do r.push r.length, for example, right? So we have this thing here, and then we pass r down, and inside our component we receive r and we do $sign derived r, and then we do, actually this might work probably, I don't know, I'll need to check. We can do initial.push length, and now let's actually do something like each initial as value each, and then we show, I don't know, a div with the value like this. So the point is that if I push something, you can see that I'm adding this to the array. But if I push, yeah, it's actually working. Yeah, I need to figure out. Sorry. I think what the issue might actually be with the data that you receive from SvelteKit, because the data that you receive from SvelteKit is a state.row, and when you do these, the state.row is not reactive to push, right? So if you want to get something like, let's say that this is the data that you're getting from SvelteKit, you would actually need to do something like this, .by r, and then you would have to do let this is equal to $sign state r, and then you can return this thing here. So if you do stuff like this, you will basically get the same behavior, but now push actually works. And yeah, this should be initial.length, by the way. So you can actually push it and like it will work. So yeah, like it's not immediate. Like you cannot, you don't have to just do like, okay, I'll change every $sign state to $sign derived. Like you need to think about what you need. I've also opened up PR today to allow, because this is a bit of a weird syntax, I've also opened up PR today to allow this, but we need to kind of discuss it, and I think I agree, like, this is a bit of a weird thing. So right now you can't actually do it. I've opened up PR so that you can do stuff like this, and this will basically work the same way. But there is also another idea, which is to do something like this: import proxify from Svelte, and after you do this, you can do something like proxify R. Now this will fail because there's no such thing, but the idea is that you could do something like this, and you could also do this proxify inside something that is not stateful. So like right now, this proxify, it is technically just like this, like proxify.svelte.js export const export function proxify value, and then you just do this is equal $sign state value return value. That's it. That's proxify. So we might export this from Svelte itself, so that you can actually do stuff like this. So like, as you can see, like this is literally like the same situation as before, and now, oh, it doesn't even work. That's weird. I don't know why it doesn't work. It could be that, yeah, that's weird. I don't know why it doesn't work. That should work. Oh, but because I'm returning value, because I'm an idiot. So this should work. As you can see, it works. It works basically the same as before. And this will also solve another issue, which is that with this, you can technically proxify the data that is returned from SvelteKit in the load function if you want. So like, I don't know, we are discussing ways to solve this problem. But yeah, in the meantime, that was it. Preserve node location for better source map. So this is actually something that was inspired by, oh, and by the way, if you don't know yet, you can actually now get like daily tips for that's not the thing. Okay, let me do this. Let me go to blue sky. Because right now we are in the middle of Advent of Svelte. So if you want, you can go to, let me see, do we have a link to Advent of Svelte? Because these are links to YouTube. Okay, let me go to Svelte Society. So we are in the middle of Advent of Svelte. Now, 2 years ago, we did a coding challenge. Last year, we did a new release on each day. This year, we are doing something different, and we are doing a proper Advent calendar. And as you can see, we will release a new video every day teaching you something about Svelte. It's a bit of a recap of the last year that made a lot of changes. And the first video actually features Rich himself explaining how inspect.trace work. And as usual, Rich is very motivated when it comes to like presenting some work. We call that conference-driven development. And so in this case, it was like Advent of Svelte-driven development. So he noticed something that could have been improved in inspect.trace, and he did it. So now node locations are actually preserved in source maps. And the result of this is that in the playground, if you take a look at the JS output, there will be a better, like initial will actually highlight the same word derived, will actually be the same, like the same code. Proxify will be the same code. And obviously, like the source map stuff is actually important for errors. So like when you are debugging your application, when you are like when you are looking at the errors in your console, this will give you a better point towards what's the actual point where some value is updated, for example. So like this is a bit more of a nuanced stuff. Like it's a bit more like you don't interact with it on the first like literally by changing something in your code, but you will get better errors, which means better user experience, developer experience. Handle cross-realm promises in Hydratable. So Hydratable, we talked a bit about it last week, and there was also a stream by Kevin with Elliot, which is one of the Svelte core maintainer that is working full-time on Svelte, and that built Hydratable. And this is basically like the allows to actually use promises within hydration. So like basically when you basically like this allows you to use promises to send promises toward like using Hydratable to the client. So, which is interesting. Like you will probably not use Hydratable a lot, but SvelteKit will, and we will need something like this. So now it's available. Chore, move DOM related effect properties to effect.nodes. So this is more stuff sorry, that is inside the Svelte code base. So like when you create an effect, we need to keep track of the nodes that are like the nodes that that effect is responsible for. So like when you create a template effect, for example, we know that we have an initial node and a final node, which is all that the part of the DOM that that effect takes care of. And we need to store the nodes because we need to then remove them whenever you like unmount that effect. And this was built in a way that made very complex to debug the effects. And so this is more of an internal stuff. So like for if you are a Svelte contributors, you will love this because it makes much easier to debug effect stuff. But that's it. Fix allow props ID to occur after an await. So this was just a bug. Props ID, if you're not aware of, is basically a way to get an ID, which is also hydratable in the sense that you can call it on the server and it will be the same on the client. And it's unique for every instance of your component. So if you have multiple instances of your component, it will just like like if I do like this, if I do const id is equal $ props dot id, and I show the id, like this, I can remove all of these. I don't need it. I can remove this. I can move back here. I don't need all of these. I don't need this, and I don't need this. But now if I have multiple components, you can see that if I refresh the page, maybe, I don't know why it's doing this. Oh, it's because it's Tailwind. So as you can see, I have like C4, C5, and C6. This is the ID for the client component. If I would had to server-side render this component, this ID would be like S4, S5, S6, something like that. And yeah, it will basically this basically allows you to have an ID that is stable between the server and the client. And like before, there was a bug where you could not use this after a wait, and now you can. Keep reactions up to date when read outside of an effect. Well, I have the feeling that this is probably related. Oh, okay, no. So this is about the unknown derived. that can cause reactivity. It checks if the reaction is updated inside of an effect, and only then will push to the reaction. Yeah, this is a complex stuff, and I don't know why Simon should be in location. But yeah, like it's a bug that has been fixed. Correctly reconcile each blocks after outroing branches are resumed. So there's been a lot of work recently about each blocks, and I think also around animations, which basically like reach the overall of how we were handling each blocks. Sorry guys, I have this cough. And the reason for that is because like each reconciliation was very complex before, and we are trying to make it more maintainable. But this caused some issue with the each blocks, and now we are slowly fixing all these bugs, and so like this was one of these. So actually these two were two of these. Correctly reconcile each blocks after outrowing branches are resumed. So the outrowing means when there is some branch that is doing some animation, it's going out. If they are resumed, each blocks were not correctly reconciled. And reconciliation is basically the algorithm that allows you to when you add a new item to an each block, the reconciliation is what is saying, okay, you just need to add an item. Or if you add an item in the middle, the reconciliation is the algorithm and is saying, okay, you just need to add an item here. And if you remove an item, you just need to remove an item. And if you remove one item and add a new one, it also was telling you to remove one item and move it here and add it here. And if you actually use the same key and you move this to the end, it's also the algorithm that tells you, okay, you don't need to remove anything, just move that below. So like, it's a complex algorithm, and so like, there was a couple of bugs. Destroy each items after sibling are resumed. So this was probably like when you were resuming an item of an each, where we were not destroying the sibling, which means that like if it was resumed and then you like were not destroying the sibling, it was basically adding it to the wrong place. Okay, that's it for Svelte. Let's see if we have something new for SvelteKit, which we should, because we have 11, like we didn't, actually, we need to go back a lot of time. So we have October 26th, Fit, use experimental fork API when available. We talked a bit about the fork API last week, but basically fork, it's a way for you to actually do some state changes and also trigger every async work that might end up with that change. But you don't apply that changes to the actual DOM. We just apply that to like an off-screen DOM. And then when you commit the fork, it will actually show in the actual DOM. And the reason why this is used is because this allows components that actually fetch within the script tag to start fetching when the user, for example, hover on a link. So this is very important because it makes your application feel very snappy, because usually like if it takes like 200 milliseconds for something to load, like if you click and then you have to wait 200 milliseconds, yeah, that's a bit sluggish. But if you hover over a link, you will probably wait before clicking at least 200 milliseconds. And so in the meantime, we can start fetching and it will make your application looks very, 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 very fast. Fix await for settled instead of tick in navigate. So this was an issue. When there is a sync work happening, tick is not enough anymore, basically. The reason is that like this was basically causing some problem with the view transition, because when you like the callback for the on navigate was called after a tick, but that's a problem because you actually want to call, like if the component you are navigating to is fetching some data, you want to wait that the component is actually waiting, like it's actually finishing to fetch everything, because that's where the DOM is actually updated. So like if you want to have a view transition, you need to wait for the new component to actually render to the DOM, and that's what settled is for. So settled will be will be resolved whenever there is actually a finish, like the new component actually finish working on the API. Which means that like if it is not fetching anything, it will resolve immediately, like tick. If it is, it will wait for the async work to happen. Wait for commit promise instead of settled. So this had a 2 or 3 PR after this, because basically like there was some subtle differences, and actually like this was released before the fork API was a thing. And then the fork API came, and when the fork API came, you had to wait for the commit instead of settled, because the commit might be like, the commit is still waiting for settled inside, but you don't want to wait for settled before the commit. And so we had to change this. Update DOM before running navigate callbacks. Yeah, this looks similar. I don't know why. Include hash when using resolve with hash routing enabled. So with resolve in SvelteKit, basically you can, with resolve you can basically go, like it's a way to type safe navigate inside SvelteKit. So instead of just doing href is equal to a string, you can do is equal to resolve, and you will actually get type information about which routes are available in your application. And it was a problem when you were using hash routing, because hash routing is actually just like changing the hashtag, and it was not returning the hashtag, causing some problem. After navigate callback not running after iteration when experimental async is enabled. Fix snapshot restore method not called after reloading when experimental async is enabled. I think this is kind of the same, in the same vein of this other. So like there is a lot of with async work, obviously a lot changes in terms of what when stuff should happen, right? And so like we are slowly discovering all of this. Expose issue.path in all issues. So this again, all issue is an API for the form remote function. So when you are doing validation with the form remote function, you will be able to read all issues. So like you will be able to read the issues about a specific form, and with issue.path, you are able to like see which part of the object is responsible for the issue. So that's what it's for. Adjust queries promise implementation to properly allow chaining. Oh, that's interesting. So like with the previous implementation of query, you could not actually chain. So like if you had some query, you could not do .then and then do stuff, and then .then and do stuff. And now you can. Make pre-render cache work, including in development. So pre-render is another query function, like another remote function that actually pre-renders your data, and it is working now, including in development. Wait an extra microtask in dev before calling $init. So this was a bug that basically made so that when you were using a remote function, both in your plus page.svelte and in your load function, for example, so you were using this remote function in both places, the issue was that the dev server, when you were using like in dev, so only when you were running the dev server, it was basically like fetching, like importing the module too fast before it was actually, it's a weird Vite circular import stuff. Like it's very weird, but the issue, like I can tell you because I actually worked on this, but if you take a look at the solution, it's a very silly solution because basically what I did is that I just added, let me show you. I've just added a await promise.resolve directly in the file when there is the dev server. So like this is a file that is generated, and we just await promise.resolve before calling $init to give Vite basically the proper time to initialize this $init function. It's a bit of a weird one, but it works, and it's only in dev, so it's probably fine. Discard preload fork before creating a new one. So this was another small bug, because basically the issue here was that you can, like, when you hover over a link, we create a fork so that you can actually do that. And then when you click the link, we actually commit the fork. Now, the problem is that we were never discarding the fork initially. So like when you hover over another link, there was the other fork that was never discarded and was just there in memory. And this also created some issue with like all the branches available, like not the branches, the batches available in Svelte. And so it was creating reactivity problems, and now it is fixed. Delete remote form all issue and add path to remote form issue. So it's just a typing stuff that is more clear. We have clear issue upon passing validation. So like when you actually pass validation, now the issues are all cleared. Don't use fork on unrelated root. Oh, that's interesting. I never saw this. Let me see. We haven't been checking if the fork still matches the route we want to load at the end of the navigation. At that point, it could have changed, or it could have matched. Oh, that's interesting. Huh. That's very interesting. Oh yeah, I can see. This is probably using oh no, it's not using. That's weird. So like you hover over page 2 and then you click page 1. Oh, that's very weird. I would have not guessed it was working, because like when you hover over page 1, it should still fork for that page. That's weird. Regardless, prevent type errors when optional OpenTelemetry API dependency isn't installed. So this was just a type error, but basically this is an optional peer dependency, and it was causing some warning, actually some error in the console when because it obviously, like, if it's not installed, it was trying to import the type and it was not there, and so it was throwing some errors. Preserve this when invoking standard validator. That's interesting. Treat client universal hook as entry point for illegal server import detection. Okay, so like if you so like illegal server import detection is that when you are trying to import something from server, Svelte will, on the client, it will actually warn at you, but probably it was not doing it for the client / universal hooks. So like within client or universal, you could actually import something from the server, and now you can't anymore. Correct query.set and .refresh behavior in comments. So you can actually set a query and refresh a query when you're doing a command. Improve the accuracy of the types of the output of field.s. So this is all for the form stuff. Allow multiple server timing headers. Oh, that's interesting. So like server timing is probably, I would guess, is something about observability. And I think that basically like the problem is that set headers can only override. Yeah, exactly. And yeah. Yeah, okay, so like you can return this server timing to then have the duration for example, some how can I say, like some observability platform. Allow access to root level issue in schemaless forms. Okay, makes sense. So like even if your form doesn't have a schema because they don't accept anything, you can still access root level issue. I think it's a fair assumption. Allow hosting hash based up on known index HTML files. So like before, basically, if you had a hash based app, you could just literally host it on index.html. Like if you tried to host the same app on myapp.html, it was erroring out because it was expecting it to be on index.html. And now you can actually do that. Breaking invalid now must be imported from SvelteKit. Now, obviously, it might seem like, what? It's a breaking change and it's inside a minor, even a patch. Obviously, this is breaking for the experimental stuff. So that's why it's a patch. But yeah, basically, before, invalid was actually an option that you would get inside the form. The issue with that is that TypeScript is not smart enough to know that if a function that you have as an argument returns never, it means that it will throw an error and it needs to stop the execution. So to fix this, now you actually need to import it from SvelteKit so that if you say that a form is invalid, so like this is basically for you to do validation, which is bigger than what a schema can express. So like you want to fetch your DB and see if there are any book left of that kind. You can say that a form is invalid like this, and you need to use this invalid function that you can import from svelte.js/kit. Remove submitter option from experimental. Form validate method always provides default submitter. So like by default now the validate will always provide the default submitter. Feed stream file upload inside form remote function, allowing form data to be accessed before large file finish uploading. So this is a very interesting work that Automated did, and basically what this means is that so before, when you were uploading a file, even just to do validation, what you would do, like when you're doing validation, you need to send the form to an endpoint with a specific parameter that says, okay, I just want to validate, don't execute the function. So we get your file, we get your form, we do form data, and we start decoding it to see if everything matches. The problem is that if you are uploading a file, and a big file, that file needs to be fully sent to the server to be able to actually validate the client. Like the server needs to get the whole object, it needs to get out the whole file, and this takes time. Like especially if you're sending like 10 gigabytes file, it takes time just to say, hey, this is invalid. And so the solution to this is that we've built a custom encoder for this. And I've said we, but it's actually mostly Automated that did the work. he built a custom encoding so that basically all the headers, so like the information about the file, are sent to the server in the first 2 rows, and then the rest of the file is sent, which means that as soon as we get the first 2 lines, we can actually do the validation and return if something is wrong. And this means that basically the response from the server is basically instantaneous. Instead, even if you are sending a very large file, so like, and if it's fine, then it's probably going to submit anyway, and it can actually read the whole file. Fix, suppress state referenced locally warnings in .SvelteKit generated root.svelte. So like inside there, we were also using the props as a state, which again, it's fine because like we knew what we were doing, but this meant that when we updated Svelte, you were getting a bunch of state referenced locally errors. And so now we added the ignore comment. Okay. Fix type error when doing response.clone in page load. So like if you were doing response.clone inside page load function, it was throwing an error, probably because it was not a response. Yeah, on node 24 plus, you cannot do that anymore. Basically, like, I mean, you can do it, but it throws a type error because I actually saw this PR. Basically, the point is in node 24, you see that we were doing reflect.get response key response. This was not working. I mean, it is working, but if it is a function, it's not binding to the response property. And so it was throwing, and now instead we are doing this object.define properties and actually like binding the value to the actual response so that it can actually work. It's a bit of a weird quirk of node 24, but it is fine. Oh, and this was 2 days ago. So that's it for SvelteKit. Let's see, we do have some new release for adapter Vercel. We have add experimental support for ban runtime. So now you can actually run ban on Vercel, which means that now you can actually do it even with adapter Vercel, which is nice. Improve runtime config parsing. So if you are specifying a runtime in a config, now it's parsed better. Upgrade at Vercel NFT version 1.0 to reduce dependencies. So this Vercel NFT is not an non-fungible token. It's basically a package that they built so that like they explore your application and they only include in the function that are deployed the files that you actually import. So like if you have some files that are unused and detached from any graph, they will not include it in the build. Sorry guys, and now obviously node 24 support, because Vercel also added support for node 24, which is nice. So now you can actually build with node 24. 4 new release of enhanced image, and we have warn rather than crash when known enhanced image dynamically passed to enhanced image. Update dependency vit image tools to v9. By the way, I think these also had some performance regression. So like you might, if you are using enhanced image, you might want to hold off to this, because I can't remember in which case there is an issue open on the repo if you want to search, but this in some cases proved some performance issue, I think in the build system rather than the actual update video image tool for caching fixes to avoid crashes and remove duplicate caching layers. So now it's probably using just the cache from vid image tools. We have 2 new releases of Svelte MCP. One is add a sync parameter to Svelte autofixer. So In the Svelte autofixer, we need to know if you are using a sync or not, because if you're using a sync, we give you different suggestions. Install latest ESLint Svelte packages to support state.eager. There's also update server name on MCP registry and update TMCP, which is the library that we are using to build MCP server, which is my library, by the way. And by the way, I updated the name on the MCP registry, but then I discovered that you can't update the name on the MCP registry. So for the moment, still has the old name. I'm still talking to them to actually fix this, but for the moment, we can't update the name yet. Let's see, we have 3 new releases of Svelte package, which resolve aliases before transpiling for rewrite relative import extension. Okay. Transform .ts extensions to .js in import-export statement of Svelte file when using rewrite relative import extension. So basically, if you are importing a .ts file inside your Svelte file and you're using Svelte package, now it will automatically rewrite to .js, because otherwise you will not be able to import stuff. Update dependency chokidar to v5. That's a simple one. We have a new release of Acorn TypeScript, fix handle decorators after type declaration. So like if you have a decorator after a type declaration, now it's actually able to fix it. We have a new release of ESLint plugin Svelte with Svelte indent crash when using import type. So it was when you were fixing Svelte indent were crashing when using TS import type, and now it's not. Prefer the structured store prop, handle runes properly. So probably when you were destructuring store props, it was not working with when you had some conflicting runes. Support experimental async compiler option. Oh, that's weird. It was not yet working, but fit no navigation without resolve, checking link shorthand attributes. Fix no navigation without resolve, allowing undefined and null in link href. So like if you add null or undefined, it does not warn you. Okay. We have a new release of the extension. Support hierarchical document symbols. That's nice. Quick fix for adding lang ts. Oh, that's very nice. I didn't knew that. So basically, like right now, if you are getting an error because you are using TypeScript and there's no lang ts, you can actually quick fix it with the Svelte extension and add a lang ts. That's very nice. Use mustache for Svelte 5 on handler completion. Okay. Support for native script community Svelte native. Oh, that's nice. Okay. Always treat a script tag as top level if it's the first tag in the file. I wonder why does it. I'm curious. Like, feels a bit weird. Like if you have something like this, I don't understand what's the situation. Fixing this situation. So what was the situation? I don't know, guys. Sorry. Restrict emmet completion with emmet specific trigger character. So emmet, if you don't know, it's the way you can like get a bunch of, like, for example, if you do dot something, it will create a div with a something class, which is very nice. Support experimental feature in show compiled code. Show compiled code is a very nice command in the VS Code extension, where you can basically like see the compiled code of the Svelte component that you have open, and it's very nice. Fit, implement, remove unused import code action. Okay, that's interesting. We have one new Svelte check. I'm gonna go over the use machine format when run by Cloud code. Oh, that's interesting. So like now when you run Svelte check, when you run that through Cloud code, it will actually use the machine format, which is better for Cloud code. That's nice. We have a new release of the Svelte language server, which is basically the same as the extension. We have a new release of Svelte ESLint parser, which is supporting name lock property, which I think it's something that is related to ESLint rather than, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. Okay, now let's go over the SV changes, because there are a lot, and we can like get some pretty new stuff. All right, we have bump default versions. That's an easy one. Update Docker PG data volume for Postgres 18. So like when you create a drizzle with Docker, with Postgres, we create a Docker for you. And now in Postgres 18, you need to change the volume data. Workspace now give files object with vitconfig and svelte config paths to be used in add-on. So if you are using the CLI, it also gives the vitconfig and the svelte config location, so that if you need them in your add-on, you can actually do that. Plus layout svelte doesn't use optional chaining now. Okay. Add Tailwind CSS plugin to Prettier config if Tailwind CSS is installed. Oh, that's nice. So like if you install Prettier after Tailwind CSS, it will also add the Tailwind CSS plugin. Generating closing script tag now works correctly for the CLI. Vitest update Vitest to 4.0, removing Vitest browser in favor of Vitest browser playwright, which I guess is the new import. Run browser tests in headless mode. Check existing condition for specified options. That's nice. Add div with display contents to library template. So if you are building with the template, you now have a div with display contents. Fix MCP, generate valid MCP local configuration for open code. So like if you are trying to install the MCP server through the SV CLI, now it correctly works with open code. Include file extension for local imports in the demo. So like this is the default demo. Tailwind, add VS Code setting for Tailwind. So now it also created a .VS Code file folder with the setting for Tailwind. Wrap link with resolve function to follow best practice. This is basically not best practice, but like the ESLint plugin. Collocate CSS file from usage. So like before you had an app.css, which was global, and the default create was importing that layout CSS from the layout.svelte. Sorry, not the layout, like app.css from the layout. And now we basically moved it to layout.css, which is also next to plus layout.svelte. Add schema definition for Gemini MCP configuration. Okay. Tailwind, update VS Code settings, file.association to Tailwind CSS. So now, again, in the VS Code settings for Tailwind, you also get Tailwind CSS association for CSS file, so that the extension can actually suggest you stuff. Add no dir check option to SV create. With this flag, even if the folder is now empty, no prompt will be shown. MCP include an agent.md or similar when using the MCP add-on. So now when you are adding the MCP add-on, it also creates an agent.md and cloud.md, I think, so that it also suggests your agent to use the MCP server. Add Vitest, when add Vitest is used within a project that uses Vitest 3, the add-on will display some text steps to finalize the migration to Vitest 4. Rewrite relative import extension to JavaScript equivalents. So inside the tsconfig.json. npx svcreate now support a new argument, add, to add the add-ons to the project in the same command. So this is very nice because if you know the kind of add-ons that you want, or specifically like maybe if you are generating this in another program, you can now use the add to specify all the add-ons that you want to add. So maybe you can have your own add command that just creates everything and does not ask you for what you want to create. Fit CLI show args used so that you can run the CLI without any prompt next time. So this is also nice. So not only now you can also run this, but also the CLI now shows which prompt to use, which command to use if you want to create the same exact program the next time. Very nice. Avoid printing duplicate non-install flag. Okay. Printed args now also display path used during the directory prompt. Okay. Use consistent wording for setup questions. That's very nice QL. Fix SvelteKonfig.js detection during create. So during create now it's actually using the right SvelteKonfig. Kit projects were detected incorrectly. So when you were using JavaScript, it was probably incorrectly. Fixed dependency version is now properly populated during svcreate. Once again, I think this is more for the plugin authors. Reload workspace before executing each add-on. Remove ES module interrupt from library template. That's probably the nice thing. We only want to publish ESM. Correctly detect executing package manager. So now when you create, you can actually check, the CLI should be able to correctly infer what you are actually using to run it. Files will be formatted after create. That's nice. So if you have a specific format, they will actually be formatted. Storybook is back to using at latest version. We were probably using some weird beta release, but now they released the 10 version, and so now we can actually use latest. And I think that's it, guys. We did it. We are up to speed. Next time we don't have to do it once again, to do everything from scratch once again. And it's only been basically an hour. So yeah, we are doing good. We are doing good. Thank you very much thank you very much for watching. Thank you for staying with me. Sorry for the initial hiccup, and sorry for being absent for a month. But now everything should work fine. So I'll see you next week. Bye, guys.